So, as we all know, the history of gaming is littered with cult classics, brilliant diamonds left to shine in the darkness by the general public. But you know what? This list is not about them. Instead, we're taking a look at some of gaming's most notorious overachievers, towering edifices of mediocrity whose staggering commercial success belied the deficiencies of their design. Translation, they kinda sucked. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are video games that sold millions despite being terrible. Wii Music. The mid to late noughties was a golden period for rhythm games. The likes of Guitar Hero and Rock Band saw gamers across the world strutting their stuff and living out their rock star fantasies in the comfort of their living rooms. Naturally, Nintendo wanted to get in on the action in their own idiosyncratic way. Unfortunately, this particular brand of idiosyncratic genius was less the Beatles and more John and Yoko. Wii Music suffered from two big problems. One was its inescapable air of cheapness, from the low-tech graphics to the public domain songs that made up the majority of its track list. And the other was total lack of immersion. Guitar Hero and its ilk succeeded because playing on their peripherals created a genuine sense of engagement with the music. Wii Music, on the other hand, simply asked players to half-heartedly swing their Wii controller around in a vague approximation of whichever instrument you were tasked with playing. This had all of the immersion of waving a baguette at home and pretending you were conducting the London Symphony Orchestra, with the downside being that you couldn't eat the Wiimote afterwards. Shadow the Hedgehog. There is no greater indicator of emo's power in the mid-noughties than the fact that Shadow the Hedgehog managed to sell millions of copies. Now, Shadow the Hedgehog may not be the worst Sonic game ever made. The glitch-filled bestiality promoting Sonic 06 definitely holds that dubious distinction, but it's definitely located somewhere near the bottom of the Sonic barrel. As well as its posturing, try-too-hard attitude, Shadow suffers from the same bugbears that affect pretty much all of the worst Sonic games, chiefly a camera that actively avoids showing you important information and overly sensitive controls making the protagonist move like an absolute pinball. Unfortunately, Shadow also adds its own bitter twist to the toxic Sonic formula, and that is guns. The gunplay in Shadow really is utterly hopeless, as the lock-on constantly fails to distinguish between friend and foe, and the aforementioned camera problems see the player having to constantly fire at off-screen targets. It says something that Shadow the Hedgehog never received a sequel despite selling millions. Sega knew that they got lucky with this Hedgehog's first and so far last game and wisely quit while they were ahead. Aliens Colonial Marines. Just look at this footage. It tells you everything that you need to know about the state that Aliens Colonial Marines launched in. The millions of people who had the misfortune to purchase this game may have expected a nerve-shredding Aliens experience, but what they got were interstellar improv routines. The AI of the eponymous xenomorphs were utterly broken, leading to scenes like the ones you're seeing here. Incredibly, the xenomorphs' wonky AI was later discovered to be the result of a single typo in the game's code, with a renegade A completely breaking Colonial Marines' artificial intelligence systems. 6 years and millions of dollars in development costs flushed down the drain because of a random spell check error. Now that was a waste of resources that even Weyland Yutani would balk at. Hey You Pikachu. I mean, how far can you stretch the definition of game here? It's a question that Nintendo has often asked itself to varying degrees of success. Sometimes it leads to greatness, like the beguiling charms of Animal Crossing. And other times, well, it winds up with players yelling futile commands at a yellow rat determined to ignore them. Hey You Pikachu was a voice recognition game for the N64 that successfully rode the Pokemon hype train to the tune of around 2 million sales, which is pretty impressive for an $80 game that contained maybe 2 hours of content. Hey You Pikachu tasked players with instructing Pikachu to complete simple puzzles through the microphone that came bundled with the game, which led to the vastly inflated price tag. Unfortunately, Pikachu's limited vocabulary, meaning that he could only recognize around 200 words, and the mic's limitations itself meant that the yellow mascot was as likely to zap you with a thunderbolt as he was to follow your commands. Combined with the game's lack of content, Hey You Pikachu was an overpriced novelty that signaled the death knell for Nintendo's foray into voice recognition gaming. Homefront. A blatant attempt at jumping on the Call of Duty bandwagon, Homefront didn't just miss the mark, it stumbled, fell in front of the wagon and got trampled to death by the horses, who then used its remains as a toilet. Homefront makes the classic mistake of any pale imitation in that it chooses the wrong things to copy from its inspiration. In this case, it means that Homefront is overtly scripted to the point that you feel like the designers are only begrudgingly letting you play it. Every single action is narrated out loud for you by your squad of teammates, while the camera points you you exactly where you need to go, and a button prompt details exactly what you have to do. It's like the developers just don't trust you and feel the need to force you into having the exact experience that they envisioned. And the nadir comes when Homefront, and yes, this actually happens, demands that you press X to jump into a mass grave. It's exactly as crass, tone-deaf, and moronic as it sounds. And to add insult to the intelligence of the player, the only QTE that this game needed was press X to get your refund. Call of Duty Ghosts. And speaking of Call of Duty, here's the point where the franchise just went off the rails. A jumbled mess of a game, COD Ghosts had no idea what it wanted to be. The game's marketing promised a campaign focused on guerrilla warfare and stealth, hence the ghosts of the title, as you sneaked around America to thwart the bad guys du jour. So naturally, the first mission ends with more explosions than a Michael Bay movie, and the finale involves flying into outer space and firing a sci-fi doomsday weapon. What? Ghosts just felt like a game made in a hurry, a hodgepodge of different half-baked ideas and themes just all thrown together in the hopes that something would stick. Take Extinction as an example, a twist on the traditional COD Zombies mode. Extinction replaced the undead with extraterrestrials for no adequate reason. It was a change for the sake of change, and COD quickly went back to the zombies in all future installments, which rather sums up Ghost's lack of impact on the franchise. Although it sold tens of millions and ended on a massive cliffhanger, COD's publishers have made no sign that Ghost 2 will ever be forthcoming. Resident Evil 6. And speaking of franchise low points, here's Resident Evil 6. Thinking about it, Resident Evil 6 and COD Ghost actually have a lot in common. They're both regarded as one of the worst games in their series, they both suffer from overstuffed, messy campaigns, and they both somehow sold in the tens of millions. Playing Resident Evil 6, the first thing that strikes you is the weightlessness of the combat. Enemies take far too many bullets to go down, and there's no sense of impact in any of your weapons. Every battle feels like a childhood play fight with that one friend who refused to admit that they were dead, usually through some sort of force field bullshit. The second thing that you'll notice is that Resident Evil 6 would have benefited enormously from, well, just being cut in half. The 4-campaign single player is easily 2 campaigns too long, and Chris and Jake's stories contain the worst gameplay in Resident Evil history. Chris's story is a dull slog, and Jake's is so badly designed it will actively annoy you. A midlife crisis in video game form, Resident Evil 6 saw Capcom embarrass itself trying to ape the trends of the time. It didn't work, and Capcom thankfully took the series back to its roots for the rather stellar Resident Evil 7. Kinect Adventures. In video games, as is the case in so much of life, timing is everything. For a golden minute, Microsoft's Kinect looked like it was going to be the next big thing in gaming, a body tracking device that promised a shining future of controller-free gaming. But it turned out to be a buggy, barely responsive novelty item that was quickly discarded when the depths of its flaws became apparent. Unfortunately, millions of people fell for the hype, resulting in the woeful Kinect Adventures making its way onto this list. A pack-in game bundled with the Kinect itself, Kinect Adventures was clearly meant to be seen as the next Wii Sports, a minigame compilation designed to show off the possibilities of the new hardware. Unfortunately, whatever magic pixie dust Nintendo used on the Wii Sports title was clearly in short supply with this one. Like the aforementioned Hey You Pikachu, Kinect Adventures is less a game and more of a showcase for a semi-functioning piece of tech. 2 hours of limb flailing let most gamers see everything this title had to offer, at which point the game itself began gathering dust alongside the Kinect. Grand Theft Auto: The Trilogy. So in 2020, we saw CD Projekt Red's infamous RPG, aka Cyberpunk 2077, become the biggest piñata of the video games industry. And November 2021 saw gaming outlets far and wide absolutely batter Take-Two's disastrous revival of the PS2-era Grand Theft Autos. And with good reason. Far from being the definitive editions promised in the title, the remasters made each game actively worse. Characters were given hideously ugly redesigns, iconic songs from the soundtracks were cut for licensing reasons, and the game's remastered weather effects were legitimately worse than the 2004 originals. And that's not even mentioning the bizarre glitches or the genuinely insulting Switch port. And yet, despite all of that, Take-Two reported that the remasters exceeded sales projections, with up to 10 million copies reportedly having been sold. Now, the GTA games themselves have always held a dim view on humanity, and if that many people willfully parted money for this dumpster fire of a collection, then you can see why. FIFA Legacy Editions. So here's a true story. If you look up FIFA 22 on Nintendo eShop, there is only one picture available in the preview gallery, which begs the question, what are EA trying to hide? Is it the mannequin-like character models, the lack of modes, or the fact that EA have been releasing the exact same game for 5 years? And that's not hyperbole, by the way. The FIFA Legacy Editions use the same engine that powered FIFA 2017, with only the team rosters and outfits changing every year. While other consoles get engine updates and new modes every year, Switch players get a reskinned version of a 5-year-old game. The FIFA Legacy editions are endemic of everything wrong with the games industry, a cynical, effort-free cash grab that nevertheless makes millions every year. The only way that the Legacy editions could be more insulting is if EA started bundling them with NFTs showing their shareholders laughing at you all